Juan Soto has made his mark right away, and so has the other former Yankee that is now a part of the New York Mets, Clay Holmes. And it is only spring training. You don't want to overreact, but here I am. I am about to overreact. And that's what we should do as fans, as watchers of these teams. Spencer Jones, we are going to overreact about him later for hitting an opposite field home run. But to start, I am going to overreact and say that the New York Yankees undoubtedly made a mistake. Not only did they make the obvious mistake of letting Juan Soto walk across town and go to Queens to join the already loaded lineup that the New York Mets have that was just 2 wins away from making the World Series to face those Yankees, but now Clay Holmes is also making the Yankees look like fools. And I'm going to start it off with Clay Holmes because we all know, everybody watching, we all know that Juan Soto is undoubtedly going to be an NL MVP candidate. No matter what Yankee fans say, oh, he's just a one-tool player. All he can do is hit. Well, he hits very good, and he showed us that today. He was clearly looking to put the ball over the yard. His first swing, he swung out of his shoes. He wanted to make a point, and he made his point in one at-bat. And then in his second at-bat, he knocked in another run. And I thought he was supposed to be this slow guy who can't beat out, a double play ball. But what happened? Bases are loaded. He grounds down to a fielder's choice. He grounds down to a fielder's choice, but he beat that throw to push the Mets lead forward. So you got to be hyped. We're also going to be talking about this new automated ball strike system that is being used by MLB in spring training. They're going to, kind of test it out in the minor league season this year. And I'm not a big fan of that, and we're getting to why. We saw Pete Alonso use it early on a two-strike count, and he did end up getting walked, so it did come into his favor. But at the same time, I don't want to see these MLB players using it in spring training because they're not going to have that luxury in the regular season. So I'd rather not even see them play with it in spring training. I hope we never see it at the MLB level, but we'll get into that more in depth in a little bit. But let's start it off with Clay Holmes, because Clay Holmes, I was talking about it yesterday. I got a video up on YouTube already about why I think Clay Holmes is actually going to be better than a lot of people think. You look at Clay Holmes' numbers analytic-wise, he is a very similar pitcher than the guy who got an 8-year deal to play with the Yankees named Max Fried. So I'm not saying he's going to be better than Max Fried, but what I am saying is he's going to be better than a lot of people think. Everybody's clowning the Mets for trying to turn him into a starter, but there have been multiple relievers turned starters, a lot of them just last year, who proved to be reliable starters that were former relievers. One guy, Seth Lugo with the Kansas City Royals, former New York Met. He finished third in AL Cy Young voting last year and pitched to a 3 ERA. Zach Little, former reliever turned starter, 3.63 ERA as a starter last year. Christopher Sanchez, a 3.32 ERA as a starter last year. Michael King, former New York Yankees reliever, got a chance to start with the Yankees in his final season with them. And what did he do? He went out there and shoved, got traded to the Padres, and he pitched to a 2.95 ERA with them last year. And then Ronel Blanco, another guy we're familiar with as Mets fans, a 2.80 ERA as a starter. And yes, he was also a former reliever. But somehow the New York Mets, they are dumb for trying to turn a reliever who has an insane ground ball rate. According to Baseball Savant, he had the best ground ball rate. Well, he did have the best ground ball rate. He had 64.6% of the batted balls against him were ground balls, and he was ranked in the 100th percentile according to Baseball Savant. So, with that said, what does that mean? That means Clay Holmes has the makeup to be a starter. He does. I get it. It was one spring training start, but he was perfect through those 3 innings. You look at the pitches that he threw as well. He had starter stuff. He added to his arsenal. He added a changeup. He was using that today, and that changeup looked really good. It looked really good. He used his sinker a lot, 50% of the time. The average velocity on that was 93.2 miles per hour. His spin rate on that was 1,636 RPMs. That's pretty good. His sweeper, he used 23.5% of the time today, averaged out at 82.7 miles per hour with a spin rate of 2,691 RPMs. That's pretty good. And then the slider, 14.7, 89.3 average mile per hour today, over 1,900 RPMs. And then the four-seam fastball, over 2,300 RPMs. And he averaged out at 95 for that fastball, 95.4 to be exact. So Clay Holmes, he pitched really good today. And then you look at the barrel percentage, 0%. Nobody barreled him up. Nobody hit him hard. He did get 3 strikeouts, but he's not a strikeout pitcher. He's a guy who gets soft contact. And over the course of, let's say, 6 innings, that's the key for him. If he can go 5-6 innings and not let up that much hard contact, he's going to be a good starter. And keep in mind, he is here to be the Mets' 4th starter, the number 4 starter. So if he's giving you a sub-4 ERA across 28 to 32 starts, that's one of the best 4th starters in baseball. One of the best. I mean, obviously not better than the Dodgers' 4th starter, but even the Yankees' 4th starter, Carlos Rodon, what if he has a better year than him? What are people going to be saying about Clay Holmes then if he has a better year making $13 million, who signed a $38 million deal with the Mets compared to the guy who signed a $165 million deal with the Yankees? He's already looking. I know it's spring training, but one, Clay Holmes had a 3.14 ERA last year. Carlos Rodon, who got rocked in his first spring training start, he had 16 wins, but he also had a 3.95 ERA. And he was brought there to be an ace. So who's getting the better value right now? Is it going to be the Mets with Clay Holmes, or is it going to be the Yankees with Carlos Rodon? It still remains to be seen, but based off, I know it's spring training, and I already said I'm going to overreact, but I am overreacting, and I'm saying Clay Holmes is going to be a very good starter. A very good starter. Just look at last year's numbers. Let me read you last year's numbers, and then I'll compare him to Max Fried of the Yankees. Here are his batted balls StatCast statistics. Last year, 2024. Let's see. Batted ball profile right here. Ground ball percentage, 64.6%. His career ground ball percentage is 66.7. So he is a ground ball pitcher. The Yankees didn't use him right last year in the closing role. That's why he got shafted. Because when you think about it, you get 1 inning. You come in the 9th inning, and you're a ground ball pitcher. Let's say you let up 5 ground balls in 1 inning, right? You let up 5 ground balls. If 2 of them are base hits, and let's say you get a walk, and 2 of those ground balls are base hits, you're screwed. You are going to blow that save. So he had more clean innings than non-clean innings, even in that closing role last year. But since he was a ground ball pitcher in a closing role, he had multiple blown saves. He had multiple blown saves because he's not a strikeout pitcher. We all know if you're a closer, you need to be a strikeout pitcher. That's what made Edwin Diaz so good in 2022. His K per 9 was through the roof. Devin Williams, same thing. New closer of the Yankees. His K through 9 throughout his whole entire career, which is why he's been the most dominant closer, in my opinion, since he's entered MLB. His K through 9 is through the roof. Clay Holmes, on the other hand, not so much. He's not a closing pitcher. If anything, the Yankees should have been using him out of the bullpen as a long reliever. So the Yankees really didn't use Clay Holmes right. So that's why the title of this podcast today is not only Juan Soto makes the Yankees look foolish, but Clay Holmes might make them look foolish too. But let's go over more batted profile numbers for Clay Holmes. His fly ball percentage last year in 2024, 15.2%. Year before in 2023 was a 10.9%. And in 2022, that was really good out of him, a 6.1% for fly balls. Line drive percentage, he was at 18%. 18%. So he doesn't get hit hard. He draws ground balls. In my opinion, I think Clay Holmes is going to be one of the most underrated signings of the entire offseason. Now, I wanted to compare him to Max Fried because he is a very similar pitcher to Max Fried. Obviously, he doesn't have this pedigree as a starting pitcher as Max Fried, but let's take a look at Max Fried's numbers. Max Fried, fly ball percentage, 16.1%. So Clay Holmes beat him there with a 15.2. Ground ball percentage, 55.3, compared to Holmes, who had a 64.6. Line drive percentage, still a very good line drive percentage out of Max Fried, only 21.7%. So he didn't get hard either. But Clay Holmes had an 18% line drive percentage. So right there, the numbers show you that David Stearns and the Mets front office, their analytical department, they saw Clay Holmes' numbers. They're like, dude, this guy might be able to be a good starter. And as long as he can stretch himself out across 5 to 6 innings, I think this is going to be a guy who has a sub 3.5 ERA. That's my opinion. I mean, that's all he needs to do. That's really all he needs to do because, one, he's got a 3.71 career ERA, and that's taken into account that he had a 6.84 and a 5.58 ERA in his first 2 years in the bigs. But since 2021, well, really since 2020, he only pitched one game in 2020, so we won't count that. Let's count since 2021. Since 2021, this guy has pitched to a 3.05 ERA across 259 innings of work. That's pretty good. That's really good, actually. Strikeouts, 282 strikeouts over those 259 innings. So his K per 9 isn't that great. But then again, he's not a strikeout pitcher. He struck out 9.8 guys per 9 innings since 2021, but that's still good as a starter, considering the amount of ground balls he gives up. He gives up a lot of ground balls. He needs defense, too. And the Mets, they actually have a pretty decent defense. In center field, they're going to have Jose Siri and Tyrone Taylor playing out there every day. Brandon Nimmo is a former center fielder who was actually a really good center fielder as he got older. Now he's going to be in left field without that foot injury, plantar fasciitis or whatever it was. So he's going to be a pretty good left fielder, in my opinion, defensively. And Juan Soto, I mean, he said he knows he needs to work on his defense. I'm not going to say that Juan Soto is a gold glove defender by any stretch. But if he works on his defense and he's only 26, there we go. And two, like I said, Clay Holmes, he doesn't give up a lot of fly balls. He gives up ground balls. So Juan Soto really doesn't have to worry about his defense when Clay Holmes is on the mound. And then up the middle, Jeff McNeil is an above average defender at second base. And let's say Jeff McNeil doesn't perform well to start the season. Well, then you got Luisangel Acuna right there awaiting for his full chance to get that everyday opportunity at second base. And we all know that Luisangel Acuna, I talk about it all the time, he's the most athletic person in the entire Mets system. And his defense is off the charts. Then you got Francisco Lindor. Every single year, he's a gold glove candidate at shortstop. I don't even need to talk about Lindor's defense. We all know he's one of the best defensive shortstops in all of MLB. Mark Vientos, does he need to improve defensively at third base? 100%. But I'm not too worried. Like I said, he's still young too. He knows he has to work on it. He's talked about it over the offseason in spring training that he is working on defense. And then Pete Alonso. I mean, say what you want about Pete. I mean, who had the best scoop percentage in all of baseball last year? Francisco Lindor loved Pete Alonso. Loved Pete Alonso because he didn't necessarily save Francisco Lindor because Francisco Lindor makes sick plays, and that's the only time he really throws the ball in the dirt is when he's, making a backhand play, throwing on the run. But those backhand plays throwing on the run usually pan out because you got a guy like Pete Alonso who is an insane scooper at first base. So if Clay Holmes has good defense, I believe he will be a good starter. And thankfully, the Mets really only have two guys, Mark Vientos and Juan Soto, who are still young, still 26 and 25 years old, and both have talked about how they need to improve their defense. So as long as Clay Holmes can draw ground balls, he can limit the fly balls, which he has done his entire career. We just went over his numbers compared to Max Fried's numbers, and he's actually had better numbers. He has a better batted ball profile. So I'm excited to see what Clay Holmes can do over the course of a full season as a starting pitcher. The key for him is clear. It's stretching him out. If he can go 5-6 innings, there he goes. I think we're going to have a great fourth starter. And that's the key there. He's only the fourth starter. He'll be making $13 million a year. And if he gives you a sub 3.5, sub 3.7 ERA even, let's give him a little bit more leeway. If it's a sub 3.7 ERA, he goes 28 to 32 starts. Mets got a bang for their buck. And with the lineup they have, if he lets up, let's say he goes 5-6 innings, he lets up less than 3 runs or 3 runs even. this Mets lineup, it will score more than 4 or 5 runs. At least I hope. On paper, they have one of the best lineups in MLB. I mean, when you have a front five of Francisco Lindor, Juan Soto, Pete Alonso, which it looks like those are going to be the top 3 guys in the lineup, and then you got Brandon Nimmo to follow as a left-hander, and then you got Mark Vientos, the powerful right-hander, and then the DH spot, whether you want to put, I mean, if it's a left-hander, then you got 2 guys in Starlin Marte and Mark Vientos who can crush lefties. And then let's say you bring in another right-hander to oppose Starlin Marte, well, then Jesse Winker pinch hits. Because we all know Marte isn't facing righties and Winker isn't facing lefties. So there you can break that righty-lefty matchup up just like that if the opposing team wants to throw in a right-hander to try to get the Mets. They can't get the Mets. It's going to be very hard to have a righty-righty matchup or a lefty-lefty matchup because the Mets are going to be able to split up that lineup. And that's the direction that this game is headed into today. Managers know when the bullpen pitchers now, you come into a game, you have to pitch to 3 batters. It changes the whole entire complexion of how you want to set up that lineup. And that's huge. Because it's not like 2015 where, a left-hander comes up, oh, just bring out a lefty. And then you got a right-hander come up, oh, one at bat to a lefty, and then bring in a righty. And I love that rule, by the way. I do love that rule that they do have to face 3 batters. Makes the game so much better, so much quicker, too. I mean, seeing like 9 guys pitch, like literally sometimes it was like 5 to 8 guys each game back in the day. But now it's changed. But all in all, Clay Holmes making the Yankees look foolish. They kind of set him up for failure, putting him in that closing role last year. You can't put a ground ball pitcher in a closing role like that. And Clay Holmes, he showed you today 3 perfect innings. I don't want to overreact, but at the same time, if there was one guy in spring training who I'm going to have my eyes glued on, it is Clay Holmes, because he gave me confidence today that he can be a serviceable starter. He can be one of those guys I mentioned before, like Christopher Sanchez, a Seth Lugo, a Zach Little, a Ronald Blanco, who has had success from moving out of the bullpen into a starting rotation. I think Clay Holmes can mirror that and mirror the success he's had out of the bullpen, but now stretching out to 5-6 innings. That's the key. Now let's talk Juan Soto, because Juan Soto, we all knew, I wonder if people are going to remember, 10 years down the line, Juan Soto's first spring training at bat. I don't think we are, but at the same time, he showed us why he is getting paid $765 million across the next 15 years. In one at-bat. And 2, in his second at-bat, he drove in another run. He is a run producer. And he's only 26 years old. He hasn't entered his prime. And this is insane to think about. I had my brother earlier today tell me that Juan Soto isn't even the second best right fielder in baseball. And just to point out my brother, he is a very good Mets fan, but he's one of those Mets fans that's never happy. He's like, well, Kyle Tucker's better. I'm like, dude, Kyle Tucker? He's like, yeah, his defense, you're better. Dude, Juan Soto is not here for his defense. We all know that. It is plain obvious. He's here because he's 26 years old, and his career on-base percentage through 7 seasons is .421. Let's go over these numbers since he came to the league. 2018, a .406 on-base percentage. 2019, .401 on-base percentage. 2020, .490 on-base percentage. And you could say, oh, well, a 60-game year, a .490 on-base percentage, that's not that impressive. Well, what about 2021 over a 162-game season? And he had a .465 on-base percentage. .465. And then a .401 in 2022. And in 2023, a .410. And then in 2024, a .419. So this guy, it is actually insane through 7 seasons to never have an on-base percentage below 400. We don't see that a lot. We never see that anymore. Who's better at getting on base in MLB than Juan Soto right now? Nobody. And it's not even just the on-base percentage. It's the fact, like I said, that he's 26 years old. Take a look at his slugging percentage. Take a look at his home run numbers. They've just been 41 home runs last year. Yes, same lineup as Aaron Judge. He had the short porch in right field. But then 35 home runs in 2023. while getting on base over 40% of the time, even if he gives you 30 plus home runs, he's still going to be an MVP caliber hitter. And it's not like Aaron Judge was the reason he had success. He had success on the 2021 Washington Nationals. That team was without Anthony Rendon, without Bryce Harper. So he doesn't need, even when the Padres were missing Manny Machado and Fernando Tatis when they were out with injuries, Juan Soto was still producing. So give me a break that Juan Soto needs protection. And he does have protection, in my opinion, because I don't think Pete Alonso has been declining because of age. I think he just had a two bad year stretch. That's it. I mean, he's had the same body since his rookie year when he hit 53 home runs. He has the same body as in 2022 when he hit 271, hit 40 home runs, and led the league with 131 RBIs. And then you got Brandon Nimmo and Mark Vientos to follow Pete Alonso. So Juan Soto arguably is in a better lineup than he was last year, because when you look at the Yankees lineup outside of Aaron Judge, I mean, Stanton, yes, he's great. He's a great home run hitter. But we'll get into him as a DH compared to the Mets DH crew right now with Marte and Winker. But Soto, he doesn't need like an Aaron Judge. He doesn't. He's that good of a hitter. And he has Francisco Lindor hidden ahead of him. He has Lindor hidden right in front of him. If Lindor gets on base, he's a threat to steal second. He had a 30-30 season in 2023. Had 29 stolen bases just last year. Him in the leadoff spot with Soto to follow, that's pretty big time. Because if Lindor gets on first base, he's a threat to steal second. And just common sense tells you, fastballs are going to be thrown to Juan Soto. So Juan Soto might have one of his best years yet with Francisco Lindor hidden in front of him. And then let's take a look at his expected home run numbers in other parks. So in Yankee Stadium, he had, playing for the Yankees last year, obviously not every game was in Yankee Stadium, 41 home runs. Right? Oh, short porch, blah, blah, blah. He needs the short porch to hit 40-plus home runs. Well, looking at his expected home run numbers by each ballpark, in Citi Field, he would have had 46 home runs. 46. And this is what I really love. You look at the other teams in the division. The Atlanta Braves, in the Braves Park, he would have had 48 home runs. In the Phillies Park, he would have had 54 home runs. In the Nationals ballpark, he would have had 50 home runs. And then the Marlins, less than 50. Less than 50, yeah, but still 44 expected home runs. So he is going, obviously he's in the NL East. In those ballparks, the numbers suggest that he is going to have a lot of home runs. He's going to have a lot of home runs. So I don't want to overreact off one at bat. But at the same time, it's Juan Soto. We all know he is going to be an MVP caliber player. He didn't even need to hit a home run in his first at bat. He could have stricken out through his first two at bats today. And I would have been completely fine. Like I said, the real reason I was really glued to this game was for Clay Holmes. I was glued to this game for Clay Holmes. And Clay Holmes shoved. And Juan Soto, I mean, we all know exactly why he makes the Yankees look foolish. I mean, he just took them to the World Series last year. And that loss of Juan Soto is going to hurt. And we'll get into the Yankees in a little bit, but I just want to mention this. The Yankees really don't have a deep lineup. The Yankees don't have a better lineup than they did in 2024. Like, I have been debating with a few Yankee fans. I've said I don't think anybody in this lineup outside of Aaron Judge is going to have 30-plus home runs. Like, two guys will definitely hit 30-plus home runs in the Yankees lineup. What are you talking about? And, it's not that crazy. Last year, they only had two guys hit 30-plus home runs. And the other guy is not on the team anymore. And then in 2023, only one guy, Aaron Judge, had over 30 home runs. So it's not that crazy of a take to say that the Yankees won't have a lot of home runs. Last year, the Yankees, I believe they led the MLB in home runs, and that was partially due to Aaron Judge and Stanton hitting 27. But Soto had 41 of those. And now you're losing 41 home runs. Cody Bellinger, you're bringing him in, yeah, but he's not the old Cody Bellinger that he was like in 2019 when he hit 50 plus. He's not. He had 20. I think he hit 23 home runs last year, and then the year before only 25. And his expected numbers by ballpark in 2023, which was his great year, he would have only had 25 home runs in Yankee Stadium. So is he really going to benefit that much from that short porch? I don't know. Remains to be seen. I have said it before that I think Cody Bellinger is that guy that can produce 30-plus home runs for the Yankees, considering he'll be in the same lineup as Aaron Judge. And it does help, obviously, having Aaron Judge in that lineup, but it remains to be seen. Losing Juan Soto is going to be a huge hit for the Yankees. I know they had an upgrade at first base, but Paul Goldschmidt, his numbers have been declining due to age. Whereas Pete Alonso, I think he had just 2 bad years. He's only 30 years old. Paul Goldschmidt is 37 years old. Paul Goldschmidt struck out over 170 times last year, struck out over 160 times in 2023, and less than 150 times in 2022. His OPS numbers his OPS has dropped. His batting average has dropped significantly. His home run numbers have dropped significantly. He only had 22 home runs last year compared to 35 plus in 2022. So we'll see. But right now, it looks like the Yankees not only made a mistake by letting Juan Soto walk, but they also made a mistake with using Clay Holmes last year. The way they used Clay Holmes was idiotic. The fact that they had the best ground ball pitcher in the entire MLB over the past 2 seasons in a closing role was idiotic. It was stupid. So both these guys are already making the Yankees look foolish. All right, let's talk about some other Mets stuff. Pete Alonso hitting in the 3-hole today. It seems like he's going to be hitting in the 3-hole to start the year, which I love for him. Because the reason I love this for him is he's going to have Brandon Nimmo follow him every single game. And Pete Alonso has had each season since 2019. Pete Alonso has never had somebody consistently hit behind him. And now having Brandon Nimmo hit behind him consistently over the course of a full season, bar no injuries, and even if he does get hurt, you slide up a guy like Mark Vientos, who had 27 home runs in 110 games last year. I think he's going to have a bounce back year. Like I said, he's only 30 years old. He hasn't even had a single at-bat in the regular season as a 30-year-old. He's not old. If anything, he's in the prime of his career. In 3 out of 5 full seasons, Pete Alonso has hit 40-plus home runs with 115-plus RBIs. I think he has a chance to shatter his own record of 131 RBIs this year in 2025 because he's going to have a guy who gets on base over 42% of the time and Francisco Lindor hidden in front of him. So if they're getting on base the way they have gotten on base throughout their careers, Pete Alonso is going to have multiple opportunities to rack up RBIs. So I think Pete Alonso is going to have a big year. I think the pressure is a little bit off him now that he's not in that contract year, even though it is probably technically a contract year because he can opt out. He likely will opt out. But he's also motivated to get that long-term deal. And there's not that much pressure because he can always just opt in and make another $24 million, which is still pretty good for him. I think Pete's going to have a good year. Like I said, 3 out of 5 of his full seasons, he's hit 40-plus bombs and 115-plus RBIs. And we don't need Pete Alonso to be the 2022 version where he hit 271 in this lineup. That's the best part about Pete Alonso in this lineup. We don't need Pete Alonso to even hit 260-plus. We just need him to hit like 235-plus and give us 40 home runs and give us 110-plus RBIs, which I think he is totally capable of doing. I mean, if we're calling Pete Alonso not clutch, that's what the big thing was about Pete Alonso all offseason. He's not clutch. Well, I beg to differ because he's had over an 850 OPS with runners in scoring position every single season beside 2024. And then in 2024, in the most crucial clutch spot of all time, what did he do? with 1 out and the Mets down by 2 in the 9th inning against Devin Williams, who I just called the best closing pitcher in baseball since he's been up. What did he do? He had an opposite field home run. Game, series, it was a game winning and a series winning home run. The most clutch home run I could say probably I've ever seen. You can go back before, obviously, 2000 when I was born, but that was ultimately the most clutch home run I've ever seen. And I'm so happy it was Pete Alonso, by the way. And then he had three other clutch home runs in the NLCS. I know we lost that series, but he had a first inning home run, which was clutch. He set the tone. So Pete Alonso, all he needs to do is just really hit home runs. And he, since 2019, has been the second best home run hitter in all of baseball outside of Aaron Judge. And he's only 1 home run behind him. And to add to that, Pete Alonso doesn't get hurt. Knock on wood, that stays. It stays how it is. But he played in every single game last season. All 162 regular season games, all 13 or 14 playoff games, I believe. I'm not sure the exact number. But he didn't miss a single game. He has never missed more than 10 games in a season. Pete Alonso is durable. He's one of the best power hitters in baseball. Defensively, he's better than you think because, like I said, nobody's better at scooping baseballs at first base than Pete Alonso, and that does matter. That does matter, especially when you got a guy like Francisco Lindor at shortstop who can make that backhand play. So, Pete, I expect him to have a really good 2025 season. And I hope he makes it super hard on Steve Cohen and David Stearns to let him walk. Because I don't think we're going to end up with Vladdy. And we're going to get into that a little bit. Talked about it on the last pod, but the Mets are not going to sign Vladdy at all because they're not going to want to have another large contract. They're paying Francisco Lindor over $30 million. They're paying Juan Soto over $50 million. Brandon Nimmo is also making a large chunk of change. Pete Alonso, if they bring him back, he'll likely get 20, 25 plus $1 million. But why would it make sense to give Vladdy, let's say he's probably going to get a 12 to 13, maybe even 14-year deal this offseason, looking for over $40 million a year? Would you rather have Vladdy or would you rather have Pete Alonso, who's going to come for much cheaper in less years? Because Vladdy is also going, just like Juan Soto, we expect him to be a DH down the road or a first baseman. Why would you want two guys who in 6 to 7 years making that much money, who are both candidates to become DHs? It wouldn't make sense. It would also hurt them. Not just like that, but how do they spend other money? How are they able to extend a guy like a Brandon Nimmo? How are they able to sign a starting pitcher, re-sign a starting pitcher like Sean Manaea? Because I see it with the Yankees right now. Look at all their big contracts. Carlos Rodon, Max Fried, Garrett Cole, Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton. That's 5 huge contracts. And look at their third baseman this year, DJ LeMahieu. And Marcus Stroman, who's also making $18 million a year. Bad contracts are hurting the Yankees right now. I'm not going to say that Aaron Judge and Garrett Cole are bad contracts, but the other ones, they aren't great. That's a fact. They are great contracts. Nobody's sitting here saying Giancarlo Stanton should be making the money he's making based off the numbers he's produced over the past few years with the Yankees. I mean, he makes his mark in the postseason. That's the key for him. He gets to the postseason healthy, and the Yankees get an MVP caliber player out of him. But in the regular season, he doesn't really elevate the Yankees as much as he used to when he was with the Marlins. So I don't want the Mets to put themselves in that position by signing a Vladdy. And take 2 on this. The Mets aren't the Yankees or the Dodgers. Like the Yankees, even though they have DJ LeMahieu as their third baseman and they have all these bad contracts, I feel like they still could have afforded to go after like an Alex Bregman or even like, let's say, a Christian Walker instead of Paul Goldschmidt. because they make a ton of money. They are such a profitable organization. They are a brand. The Yankees aren't just a team, they are a brand. You go to other countries and people are wearing New York Yankees hats. People come to New York City that don't even know anything about baseball and they just want to go to Yankee Stadium because it's New York's Coliseum. And same thing with the LA Dodgers. The Dodgers are such a profitable organization. The TV deals that they have, all the sponsorships that they have. The Mets don't make as much profit as those two teams. Like Steve Cohen went into his pockets to sign Juan Soto. He went into his own pockets to bring back Pete Alonso. He said it himself just last week in a press conference. He doesn't want to have this many large contracts. He doesn't. So I think we need to, one, as Mets fans, stop being greedy and just expect, since Vladdy is going to be available, that the Mets should undoubtedly get him. Like, I don't think the Mets are even going to make a play for Vladdy. The Mets, they made a play for Yamamoto a few years ago, and I'm very happy that that didn't work out. Because having that guy for $325 million, that is a very big risk. But for the Dodgers, it's not that big of a risk because they can afford it. And also, Ohtani, who is also a generational free agent, the Mets didn't even make a play for him. Why? Because they knew they wanted to save for a guy like Juan Soto hitting free agency next year. So that's why I don't think the Mets are going to end up with Vladdy. I really don't. And I think we need to stop being greedy and saying the Mets need to go out there and sign Kyle Tucker or sign Vladdy. I would love Kyle Tucker. I think Kyle Tucker makes sense. I think he would come for a lot cheaper than Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And two, I think it would be a better fit overall. He's a very good defender out in the outfield. I think we could plug him in left field, have Brandon Nimmo DH for a few more years, or ship Brandon Nimmo back to center field, worst case. Or you have Brandon Nimmo go over to right field, have Juan Soto. Let's say you lose Pete Alonso, put Juan Soto over at first base. You got Brandon Nimmo, Kyle Tucker, and whoever you want, whether it's another year of Tyrone Taylor and Jose Siri in center, whether it's a Drew Gilbert who makes his mark, whether it's a Luis Angel Acuna, whether it's a Jet Williams. The Mets have options in the 2026 offseason outside of Vladdy. And to be honest, I know it sounds very biased, but I'd rather have Pete Alonso as my first baseman than Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And Vladdy is undoubtedly the better player, but value-wise, that's the key. When you look at the last 4 years of each of Vladdy's and Pete Alonso's careers, Vladdy has had two better seasons than Pete, and Pete has had two better seasons than Vlad. In 2021, Vlad won. In 2022, Pete Alonso won. Let's take a look at Vlad's 2022 numbers. 32 home runs, 97 RBIs, with an 818 OPS. Pete Alonso in 2022 led the league with 131 RBIs, hit 40 home runs, had a 271 batting average with an 869 OPS. 2023, Pete hit 217 with an 821 OPS and crushed 46 home runs with 118 RBIs. Vladdy hit 264 with a 788 OPS and only had 26 home runs. So Pete Alonso, we're crapping on him for hitting this year. Like, look at Pete Alonso's 2024 compared to Vladdy's 2023. You can make a case that Pete Alonso had a better 2024 than Vlad's 2023 year. Pete Alonso this past season hit 240 with a 788 OPS, 34 home runs, and 88 RBIs. In 2023, Vlad hit 264 with a 788 OPS, the same exact OPS as Pete Alonso had in 2024, and only had 26 home runs and only 94 RBIs. So Pete Alonso's 2024 was the same as Vlad's 2023, and there's people who want to give Vladimir Guerrero Jr. a 12-year deal worth over $400 million. That's insane to me. That is a risk. And people make fun of Pete for being, let's say, husky or fat. Vladdy is also fat. Vladdy came into the league, and the biggest thing about him was weight. And I hate saying this about players, but once he gets his money, is Vladdy going to work as hard to control that weight? Is he? So you could say Pete Alonso's fat, But then why can't you say that Vladdy is fat too? I don't get it. I don't get it. And like I said, Pete's 2024 was just as good as Vladdy's 2023. So Vlad had the better year in 2024 and 2021, but Pete Alonso had the better year in 2022 and 2023. Whether you like it or not, that's just a fact. And Pete Alonso wouldn't take a 12-year, $400 million deal. I think Pete could take like a 5-year, $125 million deal. $25 million a year for 5 years. Sign him till he's 36. And then in 5 years, once he's gone, Juan Soto DH. There you go. Right there. That's what I would do this offseason. But what's up, Uncle Brian? Uncle Brian, my guy, says no way we should sign Vlad for that kind of money. I agree. Doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense. I think Pete isn't the better player, but value-wise, I think the Mets would get more for their buck out of Pete Alonso than Vladdy. And like I said, I don't want Juan Soto and Vladdy at the tail end of their careers both having that DH off. Who are we going to put at DH? Because one of them will need to be a DH. One of them will need to be a DH. All right, let's talk about the starting pitching outside of Clay Holmes. It's going to be a fun one to watch. Tomorrow, there's a split squad game. This is what I'm probably going to be watching the Marlins one. I think that's the one that's going to be on SNY too. The Nationals one, I don't believe is going to be on SNY. But the Marlins, I'm going to be looking at this offense because they're going to be facing a very good pitcher in Sandy Alcantara. So that's going to be a fun one to watch right there. And listen, I don't like overreacting to spring training, but I want to see how this Mets team does against an ace like Sandy Alcantara. We'll see. We'll see, but it should be fun. It should be fun. All right, but yeah, overall, I like the outlook of these Mets. I love Clay Holmes going 3 perfect innings. Like I said, his numbers, his ground ball percentage, his line drive percentage, like his batted ball profile is actually better than Max Fried's. I'm not saying he's going to be Max Fried, but as the Mets number 4 starter, only making $13 million, I think if he gives us a sub 3.70 ERA, 28 to 32 starts, they're getting the bang for their buck right there. And I think Clay Holmes has the ability to have a better year than that. I think Clay Holmes could change the whole entire complexion of this rotation. Because let's say Clay Holmes can go 6 innings and only allow 2 to 3 runs. Then you have a very strong front 4. You have Kodai Senga, who, if he stays healthy, he's an ace. He was a top 5 pitcher in the National League in 2023. Like, he can be an ace. And necessarily, you don't even really need an ace. Who was the Dodgers' ace last year? I know Yamamoto was making a load of money, but he wasn't a bona fide ace last year. Jack Flaherty wasn't a bona fide ace. They were missing Tyler Glasnow. Like, they didn't have a bona fide ace. Walker Buehler had over a 5 ERA last year. They didn't have an ace, and they still won a World Series. So, you don't really need an ace in today's MLB. You just need a good starting rotation. And the Mets front 4, if Clay Holmes does what he did today, they have a pretty good starting rotation, at least front 4-wise. Now, who's that 5th starter? Who's that 6th starter? Either Tyler McGill, Griffin Cannon, or Paul Blackburn. But who knows? Brandon Sproat probably going to make his MLB debut at some point this summer. So I like the outlook of this Mets rotation this year. I do. And with the lineup they have, if they can just score 5, 6 runs, that's a pretty good chance they're going to win that game. Because Kodai Senga, Sean Manaea, David Peterson, I trust them. I'm going to be watching David Peterson in his spring training performances because I am not fully invested on him replicating what he did last year. But he just needs to give us, like I said, what Clay Holmes does, 3.5 sub ERA. Like, I'll take that. I'll take that. And David Peterson, let's not forget, he was a former first-round pick for a reason. Left-hander. Like, we got 2 good left-handers in this starting rotation, which is something the Mets never really have had in a long time. And looking at David Peterson's numbers in 2020, in 10 games, he had a 3.44 ERA. In 2022, across 19 starts, 28 games total, he had a 3.83 ERA. If that's his, let's say, Even if that's his ceiling, that's pretty good. But just last year, 21 starts, 2.90 ERA. And then in the playoffs, he gave us a great performances. He only had a 2.92 ERA, only let up 4 earned runs across 12.1 innings. And let's not forget, he was facing the Philadelphia Phillies. That lineup's loaded. He was facing the Los Angeles Dodgers. That lineup's loaded. And he went out there and he got some quality innings for us against very good teams. So I think the Mets rotation isn't as bad as it seems on paper. I think it actually has the ability to surprise a lot of people. We'll see, though. We'll see. And like I said, even in the offseason next year, I don't think the Mets necessarily need another starter. It seems like Kodai Senga, he can't opt out. He doesn't meet the qualifications in his contract, innings-wise, to opt out. So he'll be on the 2026 team. Sean Manaea, a 3-year deal. He'll be on the 2026 team. David Peterson, he's still going to be under contract. He's still on that rookie deal. So he'll be on the team next year. So will Clay Holmes. He just signed a 3-year deal. There's 4 starters right there. Brandon Sproat, we all expect to be in this rotation at some point this year. So he'll probably be there. And we're also getting Christian Scott back. And then on top of that, we have Blake Tidwell in the minors too. So the Mets, one, they have young starters, 3 intriguing young starters in Sproat, Tidwell, and Christian Scott. And Matt Allen, I mean, he's a wild card there. He's had an extensive injury history, 3 surgeries since his first year in the minors. But they gave him a lot of bonus money as a 3rd-round draft pick out of high school because they saw something in him. And they kept him around even after all those surgeries. So maybe Matt Allen in a few years can make his mark in this starting rotation too. The Mets, man, listen, you don't need to win a division. They are, I would say, probably not the best team in the division. I'll say that. But they do have the ability. They have the team to win the division. And I think, a lot of people say, yes, you win the wild card. You're still in the playoffs. We just saw the Mets do it last year, made a run with that wild card spot. I'd still like to win the division because I get it. You don't want to kind of get off to a slow start in the playoffs. Having that wild card round does help gain momentum. But if you have the ability not to worry about the first round of the playoffs and you get that bye, I mean, I'd much rather have a bye than have a 3-game series. That's a lot of pressure. So I'd rather just win the division. I think this team can win the division. I'm not expecting them to win the division, but I think they can win the division. That's what I'll say there. All right, let's talk about the Yankees. Yankees, 500 in spring training. But there's a few things I wanted to talk about with the Yankees. One, I think Jason Dominguez should undoubtedly be the leadoff hitter on this team, especially if he does, what it just makes sense. The Yankees really don't have a bona fide leadoff hitter. Jazz Chisholm, I mean, he's quick. He's a threat to steal second, but his on-base percentage through his career is in the low 300s. I don't think he makes sense to have in that leadoff spot. Aaron Judge, you don't want to have him lead off, obviously, because who's going to be able to drive him in after him? Cody Bellinger, he's going to need to be a run producer in this lineup. He wouldn't make sense. Anthony Volpe, with his on-base percentage through his first 2 seasons, hasn't had an on-base percentage higher than 300. I don't think it makes sense for him, but Jason Dominguez, I think the Yankees should roll the dice with it because through 4 seasons in the minors, I know it's the minor leagues, but he had a 373 on-base percentage through 4 seasons. 373, that's pretty damn good. In AAA in 2023, he had a 514 on-base percentage. Across 3 different leagues in 2024, he had that 376 on-base percentage with a 314 batting average. So if Dominguez can translate his on-base percentage to the major league level, I think that would be huge because, one, like Francisco Lindor, he's actually even more of a threat to steal a base because in 2023, he had 40 stolen bases across those 2 different leagues, AA and AAA. And then just in 2024, he had how many? Where'd it go? 16 stolen bases in just 58 games. So, I mean, I'm not saying he's going to be the best leadoff hitter in the game, but I think he'd be the best option for the Yankees to put in that leadoff spot. We saw him in that leadoff spot in the Yankees' first spring training game yesterday. It did work out. He worked a walk, scored. Like he has that speed to score from first base. And then two, like if you have Aaron Judge following a Dominguez who can get on base, then he's going to be seeing a lot of fastballs. Just like I said, Soto's going to be seeing a lot of fastballs with Lindor on first. If Dominguez can get on first with a walk or a single, anyway, he can get on base. Judge is going to see a lot of fastballs. He's going to in that 2-hole. And then you have Cody Bellinger probably follow hitting third. You have that switch hitter, righty, lefty. And then maybe you roll with I would roll with either Jazz at the switch hitting spot, or you can go, Paul Goldschmidt to keep that righty, lefty. But Jazz switch hits, so it doesn't really matter that much. I'd probably go Paul Goldschmidt, but Goldschmidt hit a nice little double off the wall, 2-run double off the wall. So that's something that you kind of like. The Yankees are counting on him to kind of have a better year than he did last year. And you look after the All-Star break last year, Paul Goldschmidt actually had a pretty good run. I mean, I'm saying that Jeff McNeil, had a pretty good run in the second half last year after the All-Star break. You can't ignore Paul Goldschmidt's numbers after the All-Star break. Let's take a look at his numbers right now. After July 16th, when the All-Star game was, put up a 271 batting average with 9 home runs. Pretty good. It's not the old Paul Goldschmidt of 2022, but it's still good, especially considering they had Anthony Rizzo as their first baseman last year. 799 OPS after the All-Star break. If he does what he did in the second half for the Yankees for a full season, it's going to be a massive upgrade over Anthony Rizzo. So you got to like that. You got to like him hitting that double off the wall. But the key for the Yankees this year, I'm not expecting their lineup to have as many home runs as they did last year. Like I said, the only worry I have about this Yankees team is their lineup. Because if Paul Goldschmidt doesn't produce, let's say Cody Bellinger has a year like he did just last year, nobody outside of Aaron Judge in that lineup is hitting 30-plus home runs. Jazz Chisholm Jr. has never had 30-plus home runs. Never. Paul Goldschmidt hasn't had 30-plus home runs since 2022 when he won the NL MVP. Cody Bellinger hasn't had 30-plus home runs since 2019. The only player on the Yankees that has had 30-plus home runs in the past 2 seasons, not just 2024, but 2023 too, the only one in that lineup who's hit 30-plus home runs is Aaron Judge. Stanton, I don't think he's going to hit 30-plus home runs, not because he's not capable of doing it, but it's because he's not capable of staying on the field. So the Yankees, they need to get to the deadline in a playoff spot because they need to make another move. They cannot have DJ LeMahieu or Oswaldo Cabrera be their everyday third baseman for a full 162-game year. They just cannot afford that. Now, let's get into their DH because I think they should roll the dice at some point with a guy like Spencer Jones. Spencer Jones hit a nice opposite field home run today, over 105 miles per hour off the bat. He missed a home run by a few inches by hitting a foul ball that was 110 miles per hour off the bat. At 6'6", this guy's got raw power. He's fast as hell, too. And listen, he's 24 years old. At some point, they're going to need to call Spencer Jones up to see what they have in him. And I think he can make that case, early on with a good spring training performance and a good, start to the minor league season, because they don't really have a DH. Dominic Smith is not a good option to be the DH. Because when you think about it, let's take a look at Dominic Smith's numbers since 2021. He's got a 241 batting average and a lackluster 671 OPS. So if Jones can build off what he did just in one game and he continues to have success at the plate in spring training, he's going to make his case to be that next guy up. He's the number 3 prospect in the Yankee system. I think it makes sense. I think it makes sense to give him a spot. And also, he has a few other pathways because he's a good defender out in the outfield. He's a good center fielder. They can have Cody Bellinger move to right field, DH Aaron Judge. They can keep Cody Bellinger in center, put Spencer Jones. I would say Spencer Jones probably stays in center, but they can DH Cody Bellinger. They can move Cody Bellinger to first base, let Paul Goldschmidt get some DH days. Like, they would have a lot of flexibility with a guy like Spencer Jones on the roster. I think it would make sense to give that guy a shot to be that versatile outfielder. You can give Judge, Bellinger, and Paul Goldschmidt DH days with having a guy like Spencer Jones on the roster. So even though he struggled last year, even over the past 2 years, in the minor leagues. Spencer Jones hasn't really done much, but he wasn't a dud by any stretch. Spencer Jones was actually pretty good in the minors over the past 2 years. His batting average wasn't great, but his power numbers were there. Like I said, his speed is what kills. In 2023, across single A and double A, he racked up 43 stolen bases. 43. And then just this past year in 2024, across 122 games at a double A level, 25 stolen bases. But the problem for him is he had 267 across 2 leagues in 2023 and then 259 in 2024. But still a 780 OPS and a 789 OPS in 23 and 24, still respectable. Still pretty respectable. And then in 2022, that's when he really, caught the Yankees fans' eyes. Because in the 2022 minor league season, he had a 962 OPS, 425 on base percentage, 344 batting average. And he's got raw power. I mean, he hit 16 home runs in 2023 and 17 home runs in 2024. He's got raw power. He's a strong human being. He is 6'6", 235 pounds. He's going to be turning 24 in May. They got to see what they have with him at some point. And I think if Dominic Smith, which will likely happen, starts the season off slow, I think Spencer Jones should be the next man up. I'm not saying he will be, but he should be. I mean, I'd rather see a Spencer Jones at DH than a Ben Rice. But the Yankees lineup is definitely concerning. But their starting rotation by no means isn't. The only guy I'm worried about in that starting rotation is Carlos Rodon. A little bit of Marcus Stroman, but if he gives you 30-plus starts and he gives you the first half he gave you last year and you're able to trade him, it's not that big of a deal. But I trust Clark Schmidt. I obviously trust Max Fried and Garrett Cole. Louis Heel, I mean, we talked about in the last pod, his problem in the second half was he wasn't getting ahead in the count. He's got some wicked stuff. He's got a lot of strikeout pitches. He's got a nasty slider, a very good changeup, but he can't put away guys, obviously, if he gets behind in the count. And that's what happened to him in the second half. But I'm not that worried because the most innings he's ever thrown, even in the minors, he's never thrown over 100 innings in the minors. He threw over 160 innings last year. I think the most he's ever thrown was like 70 in the minors. So that's a big jump. That's a massive jump for Louis Heel. So I do expect Louis Heel to come out of the gates pretty good. I will say that. In the second half, we'll see if he can, adjust. But, having guys like Max Fried and Garrett Cole who can, kind of mentor him, I think that should help. I hope it does help. But Rodon's really the only one I'm worried about. One, his injury history is a concern. The Yankees really don't have that much starting pitching depth. Like, they really don't. But, if Rodon goes down with injury, they're screwed. If Rodon struggles, they're screwed because then that's really only 4 guys you trust. And Clark Schmidt really isn't, a bona fide great starter. I mean, he gave the Yankees pretty good. I think he had 16 starts last year, sub-3 ERA, which was good. But, expecting Clark Schmidt to do that again is kind of, risky considering. Let's take a look at Clark Schmidt's numbers throughout his career. I believe his ERA is a little over 4 throughout his career. Last year, 5-5, 2.85, 3.95 career ERA, but 4.64 ERA across 32 starts in 2023. If you get that Clark Schmidt, that's not going to be good because then you really only have 2 dominant starters and then a young starter who we saw collapse in the second half due to the amount of innings he thrown. If he adjusts, I think they'll be fine. But the Yankees rotation is what they're banking on. It's clear. They have a very strong rotation on paper. On paper, though. Just like the Mets lineup on paper is good. I'm not going to buy into them being a top lineup in MLB until they prove it to me in the regular season. So we got to see. Now, the bullpen is really what intrigues me. I mean, Luke Weaver, Jake Cousins is going to be back, I think, midseason, so that should be another plus. But Luke Weaver, Tim Hill coming back, the submarine, I don't even know what I want to call him, but he's just a submarine, interesting guy. Gave the Yankees pretty good innings last year at the tail end of the year. And then Devin Williams. I mean, that's huge. So the Yankees really just need to get 5-6 innings, get the ball into their hands, and they'll be good. They'll be good. That bullpen is good, but the lineup is what concerns me the most about the Yankees. And really only question mark I have in that starting rotation is Carlos Rodon. So that's what I'll say there. That'll be it for today, though. Probably going to go live tomorrow, breaking down that split squad game, see how the Mets do against Sandy Alcantara. Yankees, I believe they also have a split squad game as well. Let me just fact check myself. I wanted to talk football today, but no, not today. Yankees actually don't have a split squad game tomorrow. They'll be playing the Tigers at 1:05. Yeah. Yeah, but it should be interesting. Carlos Rodon, like I said, only one I'm worried about right now. He didn't have too much success. He let up 2 earned runs. 3 earned runs, actually, in 2.2 innings of work. That's pretty concerning. But, and I wouldn't say it's concerning for like a Garrett Cole, a Max Fried, even a Louis Heel. But for Carlos Rodon, it is concerning. But yeah, that's it today. To put it in summary, Clay Holmes, I think he can be legit. Juan Soto, we all know he's legit. And then Jason Dominguez, he's got a bad leadoff. And give Spencer Jones a shot at DH. Got nothing to lose. All right, that's it for today, guys. Thank you for watching YouTube, Facebook, X, wherever you're watching. I appreciate each and every one of you. I'm out of here. Let's go, Mets.